the ultimate glory. Few manage to keep their date with destiny. But for many, it's been heartbreaks and a cross to bear. The Holy Grail is here in India. I'm Rupha Ramani, and Firstpost brings you the ringside view. We bring you the Cup of Dreams. Cricket World Cup coverage like never before.
The champion!
It's over!
He's done it again! Unbelievable!
Oh, straight into the roof of the net.
Nice one.
Straight down the middle. So a good performance from both teams here today.
Hi, how are you doing today? I'm Rupha Ramani, and you're watching Firstpost. And we always look to celebrate the stunning performances, the record breakers, the ones who set the bar a little higher for the rest to strive to get close to. But sport is also about the ones who do not win, to talk about the turmoil and urge systems to change. Today we will be talking of two cricket teams who have displayed shockingly below par cricket. One, the defending champions, playing uncharacteristic cricket to completely shock the world. The other, a mercurial side, who somehow find themselves in controversies no matter how hard they try. And also lined up on the show just how difficult it is to be a high-performing athlete in various sporting disciplines today. There's always some tragedy that can hit sports. But before all that, let's look at all the headlines from around the world of sports in Sports 360. Argentina captain Lionel Messi won a record-extending 8th Ballon d'Or for Best Player last night. He beat Norway's UEFA Player of the Year, Erling Haaland, to clinch the prestigious prize. Messi, with 8 now, has the most Ballon d'Or trophies, 3 more than rival Cristiano Ronaldo. Meanwhile, Spain's Aitana Bonmati wins her first Women's Ballon d'Or award. She beat Australia striker Sam Kerr to clinch the coveted trophy. In tennis, world number 2, Carlos Alcaraz says he does not feel 100% perfect ahead of his match at the Paris Masters. During an interview, Spain's Alcaraz said despite having time to recover, he still feels a little bit of a pain in his back. Alcaraz is due to face Russia's Roman Saifulin in the round of 32 matchup tomorrow. In hockey, India exacted the revenge for the Asian Games loss, beating China 2-1 in the Women's Asian Championships trophy. Deepika and Salima Tete scored the goals for India in the first half of the game. With the win, India have now confirmed their spot in the semi-final. Organisers for the Pan Am Games are facing backlash for not conducting the women's 20-kilometer race walk final properly. The race, which was held on Sunday, saw Peru's Kimberly Garcia cross the finish line in 1 hour 12 minutes. Officials judged Garcia's performance as a new world record. That was until the organisers realised that the course for the race they had prepared was nearly 3 kilometers short of 20 kilometers. The Olympic Committee has allowed the winners to keep their medals, but their times have been declared invalid. South African President Cyril Ramaphosa has declared December 15 as a national holiday. This is to mark the celebration of South Africa's Rugby World Cup win. Ramaphosa said that the holiday was meant to honour the spirit of sports in the country. On Sunday, South Africa beat New Zealand 12-11 to win the Rugby World Cup for a record 4th time. And in cricket, Afghanistan beat Sri Lanka by 7 wickets in yesterday's match to record their 3rd win in this tournament. Sri Lanka batted first and were bowled out for 241 runs in the final over. Left-arm pacer Fazl-ul-Haq Farooqi took 4 wickets for Afghanistan. Then the Afghan batters took them home. Azmatullah Omarzai, Rahmat Shah and captain Hashmatullah Shahidi all scored half-centuries. Now, starting with the Cup of Dreams and two countries who've had a nightmare of a tournament. First up, England. While the Indian cricket fans celebrated another victory at the World Cup, much has to be said about the manner in which the England side has gone about their campaign in the tournament. Defending champions are surely not playing like one. Now, wins and losses are part of sport, and it's all right to be on the losing side once in a while. In fact, some losses are key to sort out certain aspects that may just put things back on track for teams. But just the way this English side has crumbled in these conditions has been something that we have to talk about. In the 6 matches they have played, they have lost 5, winning just 1 against Bangladesh. This is not just their worst performance as a country in Cricket World Cups, but it is the worst campaign by any defending champion. At 5 losses so far, England now tops the list of most defeats for defending champions at the tournament, overtaking Australia's horrid 1992 campaign, Sri Lanka's 1999 attempt, and then of course a few others who still, however, managed to lose only 2 matches or less. Now that is significant, and it becomes more imperative to know the reason for such a loss. Could it just be that almost all of them are at the last phase of their career, most of them past 30? Could it also be certain unavailability of players who are key members like Jofra Archer or Reece Topley? Or is there some strife in the dressing room? Now, former England captain Eoin Morgan came out saying that there is something within the team that is definitely unsettled. He said, "I've never come across sports team that has underperformed like this England team, given the expectations that is on their shoulders." To which head coach Matthew Mott firmly denied all these allegations, saying there was nothing wrong with the dressing room. Now, I caught up with former England cricketer and commentator Mark Butcher just a while back to shed some light on the disarray that one of the best white ball cricket teams till just a while ago find themselves suddenly in. All right, joining me here today is former England cricketer. He's a commentator as well, someone who's obviously observing the World Cup. Not really a very happy place to be if you are an English supporter, a cricketer, fan. Thank you so much, Mark Butcher, to take out some time and join us here on Firstpost. Thanks for giving us this time to talk.
Not a problem at all. Yeah, it's right. It's a good day because England aren't playing, so all is well. Nice to see you.
Yeah, small successes, small victories. Yeah, one step at a time, Mark. But yes, speaking about that performance, came into the World Cup as favourites. Did something like this, I mean, obviously, if I asked you now in hindsight, would you even imagine a defending champion side playing the way they would? Your initial thoughts at just the way in which this campaign has gone about?
Yeah, I mean, I think everybody back here was realistic in thinking that India were strong favourites to win the whole thing, but that England would certainly make the semi-finals, and then, you know, once you get to that point, anything can happen. But if you'd have told me that a team that has, you know, the likes of Johnny Bairstow, Joe Root, Ben Stokes, Josh Butler, Adil Rashid, Chris Wokes, etc., in it, was going to play, or was going to, you know, perform so spectacularly badly, I would have said you were absolutely off your head. It has been, you know, they've sort of lurched from one bad performance to another. I think one of the things that sort of was perhaps the most shocking was the game against South Africa.
Right.
You know, they got off to a slow start, and that can happen in tournaments. You kind of, England were a little bit undercooked, I think, in terms of their preparation. But when it got down to that sort of that big clash against South Africa, where you just felt, okay, well, now's the time for the big players to sort of stand up, and they spoke about it in the lead up about how they enjoyed the pressure and kind of were looking forward to a contest such as that. And then, you know, for them to sort of tactically get it so wrong with the toss and all of the changes that they made to the team, and of course then, you know, having done all of that, to get blown away again with the bat was just quite extraordinary, really. So it's not been good watching back here in the UK.
I can imagine, Mark. And before we sort of get into a little bit of a backgrounder when it comes to England and their campaigns, or generally how they take something like this forward, just a bit about the reason for such a performance. You know, there are various things that obviously that people observe, especially those who've watched the game for so long, who've watched and played cricket for long. What do you think would be the primary reason? Would you put it down to, there are a couple, right? Would you put it down to age? Would it put it down to, you know, baseball going wrong, no prep? Where would you rest the primary reason for such a performance at?
I think there are lots of reasons, really. You know, England, prior to the 2019 World Cup success at home, England's preparation was pretty much for for at least the 2.5 years leading into it was all about that World Cup, almost to the expense of, of Test match cricket, of the availability of players for Joe Root for the Test matches, etc. I would say that the opposite has been true this time, whereby, Matthew Mott and Josh Buttler sort of took over the sort of captaincy and coaching roles midway through last summer in Amsterdam against Holland, and since then they haven't really had sort of like the full sort of squad. They haven't really had the pick of the players that they would have wanted in preparation, and they haven't really had the series either to sort of test themselves and to see where perhaps one or two holes were appearing. Then you go back into sort of like the level below the international team, and the fact that 50 over cricket has now been relegated to a sort of second team tier competition behind the 100.
Right.
And so players who are trying to make a case for themselves to kind of break into what is an aging lineup for the 50 over game had no place to play or to sort of make a compelling case for themselves to be included. So you put all of those things together, and there are reasons there. But I still go back to the fact that you would expect players of the experience and the quality of the sort of the majority of the backbone of England's squad, you would have expected performances out of them that would have given them a chance to at least qualify for the semi-finals, despite all of those things. So there's been a failure in terms of players' personal performances. Perhaps you can look at the sort of like the captaincy and the leadership. Have they been able to kind of to get the best out of these terrific players? But at the end of it all, England have just been very, very bad, and they'll all be bitterly disappointed as much as we are back here.
Yes, Mark, and you just sort of led me to the next question. It's one thing to say, maybe not prepared or maybe found out and weren't really prepped enough for these conditions here in India. But Eoin Morgan recently, of course, he's the last World Cup winning captain as well. Eoin Morgan recently coming out saying that all probably isn't too well in the dressing room. That's a bold statement for a former England captain to make. Would you agree with that? Because it can't just be performances outside, it's what's happening inside that affects it too.
Yeah, I mean, well, people are always looking for another juicy narrative, aren't they? And Owen, to be fair, Owen's in India, and Owen's a lot closer in terms of age and in terms of vicinity to that dressing room. So if there was something, then I'm guessing he would hear about it. As far as I'm concerned, back here, I haven't heard that. But one thing I will say, and it's a fairly obvious point. You look at any of the teams that are below expectation in the World Cup, and there is always a little bit of internal strife when that happens. And that's because the players are very proud of their performances. That's because nobody likes being humiliated. And so therefore there are going to be disagreements and there are going to be arguments. I would be very surprised if there weren't, given the way things have gone. How that plays out in the future will be interesting to see. Look, England in the last two 11s that they've put out, the youngest player in the 11 has been Liam Livingstone at 30, right? You've got 2 or 3 36-year-olds. Everybody else is sort of 32 and above. And so England's next white ball assignment, because let's write off, the World Cup is done, it's over. And England's next white ball assignment is in the West Indies in December. And in that squad there'll be a different captain. I expect Mott, the coach, will stay and have the opportunity to try and build something towards at the World Cup, because again, he and Buttler inherited somebody else's team, so they haven't had the chance to put a stamp on what happens. And there'll be players like Will Jacks and Phil Salt, and Bryden Cass. Sam Curran will come back into things. Harry Brook will be a major part of the rebuild for the next time. I mean, the fact that he hasn't been playing has been slightly astonishing, given that he looks like one of the only blokes who's in any sort of form whatsoever. And so things will move forward. I would expect that 90% of England's squad in this World Cup will not play one-day international cricket again. And I'm not saying that as a punishment. That's not sack them all, because they have been, let's not forget, they have been England's best ever white ball team, bar none. and they have kind of changed the way that the 50-over cricket has been viewed in this country and played in other places. So whilst this has been very disappointing, you also have to take your hat off to them and sort of say, well, it's been an incredible era, but they all come to an end. So, and the reason that they will be overturning is simply because none of them will be available playing 50-over cricket, you would think, in the next World Cup. Yeah. And so the time has come for renewal and for younger players to come in and take their places. And that's the natural order of things. And I reckon that if you look at sort of even with India, with Australia, with a lot of the top teams, that will be the same thing as well. Only South Africa, perhaps, of the more successful sides in the World Cup so far, have got enough players who are who have another World Cup in them. Yeah. But you would say that a lot of the Indian guys won't make it to the next one. A lot of the Australian guys won't make it to the next one. So there will be a lot of renewal in terms of 50-over cricket. And who knows what the format has in store for us as well in the years coming up.
True, a lot of things are changing and at a very rapid rate. But interesting you say this, Mark, because, we recently, right after that loss, in fact, against India, at the press conference, Jos Buttler's asked, so do you still see yourself as the captain in the foreseeable future for white ball cricket, ODIs and T20? And there's not even a pause, and he says, yes. Where does this leave Jos Buttler?
Yeah, I think that's an interesting one. Jos the batsman, Jos the sort of the one of the best white ball batters there is perhaps more important to England than Jos the leader. And they've made a lot of tactical blunders in this World Cup so far, I think. Around tosses, around sort of some you change the team to be sort of more sort of specialist in the bowling department, and then you ask yourselves to chase runs when you've not been a particularly successful run chasing side. That's the South Africa game I'm talking about. Fielding first in the blazing heat when nobody can breathe. It just kind of some odd calls have been made tactically. But most importantly, Jos hasn't performed with the bat, and that's the thing that England need from him the most. I would be inclined, because again, I don't think he'll make it to the next World Cup. Again, you think about the landscape of cricket at the moment and the way that the leagues are taking over, and that players are getting pulled from pillar to post, and certain and formats become less attractive. And it's happening now, and it will happen more and more in the future, you should imagine. So the idea that Jos Buttler would, if he remains as captain after this World Cup, would then be leading the team into the next one, I think is unlikely. Yeah. And so I think if he still has the hunger and the desire to want to play the 50-over format, then absolutely he should be picked and be in the team. To help along the younger guys alongside him. But does he need to be captain to do that? I'm not so sure. So look, it's not something that I'm strong on. I'm not saying sort of axe Buttler, he needs to go. It's not that. It's just I just don't know whether there's any sense in him remaining as captain, and that England should take the opportunity to try and rebuild from the ground up, much in the way that they did when they kept Owen Morgan on after the disaster of the 2015 World Cup. Okay. Get new players in, new fresh impetus, and build from zero, and hopefully put on a better show next time.
Mark, it's been a pleasure as always speaking to you. Thank you so much for taking your time off. And who knows, we're going to probably, we'll catch up again and see where England heads from here. Thank you.
Okay. Thanks, Rupha.
And from England, we shift the focus to another team that is facing a crisis this World Cup, Pakistan. The men in green are under fire on multiple levels. From dwindling performances on the field, rumours of locker room squabbles, to discontent back home. It's a potboiler of all things that can possibly go wrong. Pakistan's cricket team is not having the best of World Cups. And we've looked at Pakistan on the field performance thoroughly. The team looks dejected, the fans are unhappy, and the negative energy is rubbing off even at home. Allegations, an investigation to a resignation. Pakistan's cricketing world is in the thick of drama once again. So how did the men in green end up in such murky waters? It's all been brewing since the 23rd of October, the day when Pakistan lost to Afghanistan. And it reached its boiling point last Friday when Pakistan lost to South Africa. Pakistan Cricket Board, or PCB's chief Zaka Ashraf, was seen meeting former players several times to discuss what they called cricketing matters. At the same time, some former players like Waqar Yunus, Shoaib Akhtar and Wasim Akram openly criticised the PCB and the team selection committee. And Pakistan's media houses went to town with it. Allegations of corruptions were made. Questions of unethical practices were raised. Now the PCB have created a 5-member investigative team to look into the allegations. And this has prompted the chief selector, former Pakistan captain Inzamam-Ul-Haq, to resign. Here's what he had to say.
I was told on a phone call that a 5-member committee has been created. So I told the board that as long as the investigation is going on, I will step down. When everything is back to normal, I will sit down with the PCB again. We are cricketers and we are available all the time to serve Pakistan. But since I am facing an inquiry and because of the nature of my job, I should step down and let them conduct the probe.
Inzamam also went on to say that the allegations being made against him were baseless and that people needed to do their research better. So what is the controversy involving the former PCB chief selector? At the heart of the storm is a cricketing agency called Yazoo International Limited. According to reports from Pakistan's sports media, Inzamam is a shareholder and one of the 4 directors at Yazoo International. But that's not it. Another player management firm called Saya Corporation has hired Inzamam-Ul-Haq's brother as the company secretary. And this raised alarm bells in Pakistan, because Saya represents some of Pakistan's current players, including Captain Babar Azam, Mohammad Rizwan and Shaheen Shah Afridi. Now, these can all be coincidences. The world of cricket, especially in Pakistan, is relatively small. Former players often engage with such companies in a way to give back to the sport. But PCB has taken the allegations seriously by ordering an investigation. They have already been under fire for Pakistan's subpar performance at the World Cup, and the allegations against chief selector Inzamam are only adding fuel to that fire. If that wasn't enough, some retired players are making it a point to fan the flames even further. Former cricketer and coach Rashid Latif has made 2 startling revelations. The first is that the PCB chairman and captain Babar Azam are not on talking terms. The second claim is that the Pakistan team have not been paid for their salaries for the last 5 months. No salaries for 5 months. Now, these are 2 extremely scathing allegations. Hear it from Latif himself.
बाबर आजम 2 दिन से चेयरमैन को मैसेज कर रहा है, वो रिप्लाई नहीं कर रहे. सही, ठीक है ना. सलमान नसीर को कर रहे हैं, उस्मान वालों को कर रहे हैं. तो क्या रीजन है रिप्लाई नहीं कर रहे अपने कैप्टन को? सही बात है, ठीक है ना. तो जिस बोर्ड के आप चेयरमैन हैं, बोर्ड फिर प्रेस रिलीज निकाल रहे हैं आप. और ये प्लेयर्स को कहा है कि जो सेंट्रल कॉन्ट्रैक्ट साइन किया है वो दोबारा से हम देखेंगे और ये सेंट्रल कॉन्ट्रैक्ट माना नहीं जाएगा. 5 मंथ से प्लेयर को सैलरी नहीं मिली. बिल्कुल. तो प्लेयर खाक खेलेंगे क्या?
Now, those are some serious allegations, and the PCB has not cleared the air on these comments that are doing the rounds. So what is happening in the Pakistan camp, that too in the middle of a World Cup? There is a disorder at home. Veterans are openly taking digs at the PCB and the team. The chief selector of the country is facing an investigation and has resigned. The internal politics and dynamics are at its peak. And this is the last thing players would want. Instead of throwing allegations, veterans and the media could have waited till the end of the World Cup. It would have had a lesser impact on the team. Their psyche, their mental makeup. It is a tournament in India, and with the crowd so partisan and one-sided, the pressure is already intense. Players are allowed to have bad tournaments, and Pakistan are having one right now. But the drama and political meddling is possibly worsening it. Every team at some point have to go through ups and downs. And this is a severe down for the men in green. But that's the beauty of sports. Nothing is permanent. Pakistan displayed splendid bowling and batting against Bangladesh. A win now, though, will just be consolation, but a great morale booster amid the ongoing turmoil. So our message for Pakistan is that this too shall pass. Now, sports is known for bringing together all kinds of emotions into a match. The joy of winning, the pain of an upset, the adrenaline rush after a whistle blows at the start of a match, the love and bond shared by teammates or even opponents. Everyone who has played a sport will have a set of memories that they will always go back to. The first wicket, that first goal, the first medal, or the first loss. But there is one emotion that we haven't mentioned yet, though it is also tied to sports: the shock and sorrow of death. And in sport, just like the trials and tribulations of life, the loss of life is not uncommon to sports. And that just shows how risky this lifestyle is. Athletes already have short-lived sporting careers because sports takes a massive toll on the body and the mind, and sometimes it goes even further, especially when the actions of players themselves claim the lives of another. Obviously, no way that's the outcome anyone wants, but sometimes the sporting gods have made up their minds.
Adam Johnson, an ice hockey player, died in a match on Saturday. Johnson suffered a freak accident while repping the English club Nottingham Panthers. The tragic death happened when Johnson was slashed in the throat by the blade of opponent Matt Petgrave's skate. Johnson collapsed in the middle of the rink. He was rushed to a nearby hospital, but doctors failed to revive him. The incident has shook fans worldwide, particularly in the hockey community. Tributes for the 29-year-old Johnson poured in. But soon, things turned ugly for Matt Petgrave. People accused him of foul play, of raising his leg above the approved height. Some have even called for the arrest of Petgrave, calling it a homicide. Such comments have sparked heated debate about safety in sports. On the 25th of November in 2014, another unforeseen death rocked the world of cricket. Philip Hughes was a cricketer from Australia who died while playing the game. During a domestic match, Hughes was at the crease and was batting at 63. That's when he was struck in the neck just beneath his helmet with a cricket ball. Hughes had misjudged a bouncer as he attempted a hook shot. Despite wearing a helmet, Hughes was struck in an unprotected area next to the back of the ear. He collapsed instantly and was rushed to the hospital. Hughes underwent surgery but slipped into a coma. 2 days later, he succumbed to his injuries. That too, just 3 days before he would have celebrated his 26th birthday. Almost 6 months later, Cricket Australia announced an independent review into Hughes' death. The final verdict was that Hughes died from a misjudged shot. The investigating body ruled that neither the bowler nor the umpires were at fault. The 5th of December 2004 was a fateful day for football fans. Brazilian forward Cristiano Jr. was playing for an Indian club, Dempo, when he died on the field. At that time, Cristiano Jr. was one of the highest paid footballers in India and had a massive fan following. During the finals of a domestic league match, Jr. collided with the opponent team Mohan Bagan's goalkeeper Subroto Pal. The Brazilian staggered away after the collision and collapsed on the field. Attempts to revive him were unsuccessful. He was rushed to a nearby hospital but was declared dead on arrival. After the match, a case was filed against the goalkeeper for negligence, and Subroto Pal was suspended for 2 months. In honor and memory of Cristiano Jr., his club Dempo retired his jersey forever. Motorsports are considered to be some of the riskiest, if not the most riskiest, professions. And one of the most terrifying motor rally accidents was seen on the 18th of February in 2001. During a Daytona 500 NASCAR race, Dale Earnhardt lost his life after being involved in a 3-car crash. He collided with his opponents on a turn, lost control, and hit the outside safety wall head-on. Earnhardt was rushed to the hospital but was announced dead on arrival. An autopsy revealed that Earnhardt had fractured his skull in the accident, which caused the death. Further investigations showed that had it not been for a seatbelt failure, Earnhardt would have had a higher chance of surviving the crash. One of the more prominent racing accidents involves legendary Formula One driver Ayrton Senna. During the 1994 San Marino Grand Prix, Senna sped through a corner lap and ended up losing control of the wheel. He crashed into a concrete wall at a speed of over 200 km per hour. Within 2 minutes of the crash, Senna was removed from the wreckage and rushed to a hospital. Doctors tried their best, but he succumbed to his injuries and was declared dead. In honor of his death, the government of Brazil announced a day of mourning. Over 500,000 people flocked to see his funeral procession. Senna's death had left a deep impact not just on the racing community, but the sporting world too. sports are dangerous and the players know it. Not only have many athletes lost their lives to sports, but many more have been left with brain damages, partial paralysis, broken spinal cords, and severe career-ending injuries. And yet, sportspersons continue to choose such a lifestyle out of pure passion for the sport itself, which is one of the biggest reasons why society has so much respect for athletes. Because players and athletes are people who give up the comfort of a cushy, comfortable job to do what they love, so that they can make their country, their families, and their fans proud.
Just a way to salute sports persons across the world. But just a little bit of time left on this show before we wrap up. We'd like to give you our last serve for today. South Africa's rugby squad returned to Johannesburg with the World Cup trophy and were in for a rousing welcome. Take a look. Well, that about wraps it up here on Firstpost. Thanks for watching this particular episode, but of course, keep following us for more fresh perspectives and insights into the world of sports. And as always, continue our coverage of the Cricket World Cup only on the Cup of Dreams. For now, though, bye-bye. Thanks for watching.